Welcome to Aston Means Business, a podcast from Aston University. My name's Steve Dyson, and I'm a journalist who's interviewing a mixture of top business academics and graduates who've developed their careers and businesses here at Aston University. This podcast has been going since October 2019, and there are now more than 50 episodes that you can find and listen to simply by Googling Aston Means Business. This is the first episode in the new series of Aston Means Business, and we're focusing on how the university helps to prepare businesses and executives for Industry 4.0 with Aston University's 2030 strategy front of mind. In today's episode, I'm going to interview Jack Miller. He's a manager at UK luxury car brand Aston Martin about his Apprenticeship Executive MBA here at Aston University and how that's helped to develop his career. Also joining us will be Ian Cornelius. He's a teaching fellow and is director of the Executive MBA programme here at Aston University. Oh, and if you find this discussion interesting and you'd like to know more about Aston's degree apprenticeships, why not visit aston.ac.uk/business. Hello, Jack and Ian.
Hello, Steve.
Hi, Steve. Good to be here.
Great. Jack, before we start talking about your experience on the Executive MBA programme, tell us just a little bit more about yourself. What's your background and how did you end up at Aston Martin?
So for me, Steve, I've always been very entrepreneurial. So starting from the primary school playground where I was selling everything from Pokémon cards to Belgian waffles and Oreos through to selling all sorts of university like mini fridges for a young enterprise competition. So entrepreneurship for me has always been an incredibly important vein that's ran throughout my life and my career. It wasn't just something that would benefit me towards maybe making a business. It was a genuine passion for me. I loved commerce. I loved business, meeting people, selling things. So for me, it was always a real passion point. I think cars is probably passion number two. So with entrepreneurship, there's also the cars. Car was my second word. So it was always something that I was obsessed with.
What was the first word?
The first word was burger. So it was either Burger King or go into the car industry,
Okay.
which I think I made the right decision. So having always loved cars, I remember when my mum got her first car and it was the greatest thing that had ever happened. And I remember driving past the local Aston Martin garage and basically dribbling in the car on the car window thinking, wow, what are those? I wish I had one of those. So yeah, Aston Martin's always been there for me, but certainly cars. So I'm very pleased to do what I do.
Now, the Executive MBA programme, how did that come about and how has it helped you in your career? How have you developed?
So education has always been something that I see a lot of value in. My first bachelor's degree in business management and entrepreneurship made me realise this is the exact area I want to get into. Business management, strategy, entrepreneurship, real passion point. When I finished university, I thought, maybe I'll never do that again. That was hard at times. And having cooled off after that period, I very quickly realised that I really missed academia. I missed the theories. I missed the people, meeting the lecturers and the local businesses that come in to support such programs. So for me, an MBA started to creep into my mind. And I remember my dad saying to me, go on, son, go and get an MBA next. And I wasn't sure, was I good enough? Could I do it? But it very quickly became a dream. And having met people in my industry who are very senior, either members of the board or senior management directors, I realized that a lot of these people would either had PhDs or had conducted themselves in some sort of master's program, whether that be marketing, management, or a program as sophisticated as an MBA. So I kind of looked around me and saw all these senior talented people that had an MBA, and I thought, yeah, that's a bit of me. I need to get myself towards that. I was very fortunate that both my employer and my line manager were extremely supportive of the concept. It was 12 months before I joined the program where I put it in my development program for the next year. I had start an MBA, very open goal, but that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted to do an MBA, but specifically an MBA that also incorporated the apprenticeship element. So I think having an MBA is great. It's amazing to have that, academic knowledge and some of the leading theories, but the apprenticeship side of things makes it that bit more practical and also allows you to apply that directly into the company. And I remember the conversation I had with my line manager when I showed them the syllabus of the Aston University Executive MBA program. They genuinely had a smile on their face when they realized how practical it was and how much of a focus there is in terms of putting those learnings into the company. So it was a real passion for me. It was a real dream for me. And I was extremely fortunate that both the company and my line manager saw the value and put me forward to the program.
Ian, let's bring you in here. And for those watching, tell us just a little bit more about yourself first. Just quickly, what were you doing before you came to Aston, and what's your own experience in industry?
Sure. So I'm an accountant by training, so a rather more traditional and boring route perhaps than Jack. So I started my career at Pricewaterhouse, spent sort of 6 or 7 years there, doing various things in their advisory department, insolvency, and then got into training and development department within Pricewaterhouse. And that's where I guess I found what you might call my calling, my passion for training and development work. I spent a bit of time in industry. I was the financial controller of Halfords for a while when they were part of the Boots Group, and then found my way into corporate training and consultancy, an organisation called Kaplan, where I was the operations director for a while. Did a lot of work there with corporates, big and small, SMEs as well. On the back of that, set up my own training and consultancy business, which I still have and I still run alongside my work here at Aston. And that keeps me honest, actually, Steve, because you're able to go into a number of businesses with what I do, see what they're actually doing, how they're applying some of the sort of theories, concepts, frameworks that we talk about here on the Aston MBA, and feed that back into the classroom when you get back to Aston. I'd actually been involved with Aston for a number of years, initially in their accounting department, but increasingly in the last few years, getting involved with the Executive MBA. And I was asked to come on board to become the program director of the Exec MBA, which I was absolutely delighted to do. And I think for me, it's the sort of perfect sort of combination of a bit of academic experience and sort of underpinnings that I've gathered over the years, but also the very practical side of things that I have from my consultancy business and my consultancy work.
No, it's interesting. And let's stay with you, Ian, to talk a bit more about the Executive MBA program. I mean, we've heard about how Jack found it and how he started on the course with the backing of Aston Martin, which is great. But before we listen to more about what he got from it, perhaps you can tell us a bit more about the other sort of people who join the course and what they actually learn.
Of course. So one of the great things I think about an MBA, and I don't know whether Jack would agree, is the variety of people that you get to meet. So we have students who join our MBA from big organizations, from small organizations. Maybe they're middle managers looking to take on a more senior role. Maybe they're thinking of setting up their own businesses. They're in small, high growth businesses. We have individuals from large corporates. We have individuals from the public sector. We have individuals from the third sector. So one of the really, really important things about the MBA is this collegiate atmosphere that we can sort of engender in our students. And in many ways, they learn as much from each other as they do from the sort of academic sort of interventions that we put together on the MBA. And we strongly encourage that. We put sort of interventions in place to help them to do that. We couldn't do that during COVID, for instance. We were running all of our MBAs remotely, and we were so delighted to be able to get students back into the classroom, back onto campus, as we've been able to do in the last couple of years or so. In terms of what we deliver, I mean, MBA programs are sort of general management programs. So the sort of things that you'd expect to see in all MBA programs are the sort of things we deliver here at Aston. So students will get core foundations in things like strategy, operations, finance and accounting, sales and marketing. That's all core. They get to choose a couple of electives on the Aston MBA, so they can start to sort of focus on a specialism, for example. And those specialisms are quite helpful later on in the program when they approach their final MBA project, which I know we're going to talk a little bit more about later, Steve. Perhaps, though, the unique feature that I'd like to mention here about the Aston MBA, something we're very proud of, is the Aston Edge, which is our personal development and leadership program module that runs through the heart of the program and really sort of, we think, differentiates and defines what the Aston MBA is all about. On the Aston Edge, we get experts both from internal faculty and from external sources as well to talk about what we believe are really important and contemporary areas of leadership management and theory at the moment. So sustainability, how we motivate people, the importance of equality and diversity. And a phrase we use quite a lot, which we might talk about later on, VUCA, V-U-C-A, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. The world in which we live in is very, very different from what it was even 20 years ago. And the sort of skills that leaders need to navigate that VUCA world, we believe is very different as well. So things like self-awareness and reflective practice and sort of a strong sense of ethics and morals and purpose are very much at the heart of what we do on the Aston Edge and what we do on the MBA in general.
Some really rich stuff there. And before we talk to Jack about what he got out of the programme, I just want to ask you one more question, Ian, and that's about the dissertation part of the MBA. What does that involve? And perhaps you can give us a couple of examples of how it's helped other people on the course and indeed their employers.
Of course. So the dissertation is in many ways what the Executive MBA program leads up to. It's a significant piece of research. So before students do it, they undertake a research methodologies module that gets them ready to approach that piece of research. And then what most students do is choose a major consultancy project, perhaps within their own organizations, and adopt a rigorous approach to analyzing it and coming up with recommendations for those organizations. It's interesting to hear Jack earlier mention that on the version of the MBA he did, which is the degree apprenticeship, that he was very pleased that it balanced practical and theoretical. And that, in a sense, is what the MBA project is all about. We'll give students the opportunity to apply all of the theoretical frameworks and knowledge and the academic underpinnings that we've given them over the program to a practical business problem in their own organizations. So we talk a lot about evidence-based decision-making, for example, really sort of approaching that problem with a discipline. And because of that, of course, it's something that the organizations who send students to us are really, really grateful for, because we're helping them solve some of their real business problems, whether it's a strategy and a direction they want to go in, or a particular product they want to launch, or a market they want to go in, or a HR or operational sort of issue they need to deal with, a whole range of things, really. But always very practically focused on the business, but with strong theoretical underpinnings.
And maybe an example of someone who's looked at a particular area and their employer, how it's helped them.
Of course, it's difficult to be too specific because, of course, the very nature of these projects is that they're often confidential to the students and the organisations that run through them. But one that I was actually looking after myself, because as well as being the Executive MBA director, I also sort of supervise some of our students through their projects, which in itself is hugely satisfying. And as an academic, you learn a lot from that and keeps you grounded. And this one spoke to my underpinning as an accountant, really. I had a student who was looking at a particular product in his organization and trying to work out why the profitability of that product wasn't what they thought it was. So they were getting poor results from this particular product. So using some of the theories of product profitability that we talked about on the accounting module, he was able to analyze properly what was going on. The organization was able to strip out some of the costs that weren't actually adding any value. And the product now is more profitable and valuable to that organization than it ever was. That's a real benefit to an organization that helps them meet their financial targets and financial strategies. So that's what I mean by genuine value and genuine benefit.
Yeah, it sounds really practical stuff. Jack, let's come back to you. Obviously, you've explained why you took up the Executive MBA and the support you got from Aston Martin, which was great. From your perspective, though, what have you got from it yourself? What are the benefits of you taking the MBA for you, Jack, but also for Aston Martin? What have they got from it?
So I look at the benefits through two lenses, really. There's the personal and there's the professional element. Honestly, before starting the MBA, I'd only really considered the kind of professional outcomes from the MBA, in terms of how it develops my career, but also in terms of how it develops my employer. But I think the personal side of it is something that I didn't expect to have such a profound impact upon who I am and how I genuinely go about, day-to-day life. So I think if I look at the professional element firstly, I think one of the key benefits really is this kind of holistic, rounded view that the MBA gives you in terms of how businesses operate, how the future is changing, the world and the businesses that operate within them. So that kind of rounded view is so powerful because it supports your decision making. You're not just making a decision purely on, let's say, financial KPI. You're making a decision based upon, if I use one of the theories, people, planet, profit. So you're looking at a much more rounded view of commerce and business and the impact that that business has upon the world around it. So certainly professionally, there was that kind of rounded knowledge improvement. There was a lot of kind of technical areas. Ian, you talked about the accounting side of things, which is an area that, I'd done a finance A level, but the accounting aspect, I'd never even thought about touching on that. So the accounting module was extremely powerful because it showed me how to interpret, business data, business financials, and make decisions based upon that data. So rather than just thinking about, customer requirements, for example, giving you that lens to look through the proposal, look through the proposition, and think, how does that support the business financially? So certainly the rounded view, the technical knowledge view has been very powerful. The ability to then specialize and dive into a topic that's particularly important to me was something that I got immense enjoyment from. So through the MBA, I realized that actually strategic thinking and business strategy were areas that I was extremely passionate about and had a real keen interest in. So as Ian mentioned, doing the dissertation, doing the project element of the Executive MBA was extremely powerful because not only could I specialize my MBA into strategy, which I successfully did, I could also center my research project around strategy. So, for me, I went down the strategic route. At my employer, Aston Martin, it's a company that's going through significant strategic shift. And this provided a fascinating canvas for me to explore my project through. So my project gave me the ability to conduct interviews with all the senior leadership of the business to understand the level of understanding with the strategic direction and to highlight a range of recommendations that would support the understanding, the implementation, and the ongoing success of the new strategy. So not only did it allow me to dial into my interest, which was strategy, it also gave me the opportunity to meet the company's most senior leaders. So all of the regional presidents from around the world and a number of the senior directors at head office, which, getting that level of exposure is phenomenal. And the reason for that was directly the project on the MBA.
And you talked about how you as a person benefited as well. Go into that a little bit more for us.
So I think one of the most important things on the MBA is how it allows you to understand yourself in a much better way. Ian's talked about the personal leadership focus module, which was again, I was focused on finance, strategy, operations, and the personal leadership focus, whilst I thought it'd be interesting, I didn't realize the impact that would have upon me. And the most important thing I learned from that was reflection. I was somebody that, I think a lot of people struggle with imposter syndrome at certain points in their life or in their career. But certainly for me, I'd always found that I was accelerating really fast, but because of that, I was always surrounded in people that were, more experienced than I was. They were older than I was. They'd been to more countries, worked in different departments that I hadn't. So there was always this feeling of, maybe not being good enough, let's say. And the personal leadership focus module and that reflective element allowed me to kind of look back at everything that's happened and look back at all the things that you do day to day and think about actually how fantastic some of those things are, and also look at how, there is no such thing as a bad experience, right? It's just an experience that changes the way in which you approach something in the future. So that reflective element was extremely powerful. And another kind of personal element was, Ian, as you say, that kind of collegiate factor where you're surrounded by fellow students, by leading academics. Meeting these people, spending time with them, and creating genuine friendships with these people has been phenomenal. Still today, I have a WhatsApp group with some of my close cohort, and through that group of people that I keep in close contact with, I was actually given the opportunity to engage in some executive coaching, which I never even thought I needed it, or I would have that at any point in my life or my career, and that was genuinely one of the most life-changing experiences that I've ever had. And it massively improved the way in which I look at work and how I look at life and how I balance those two things. So amazing experience, not directly on the program, but an indirect benefit through meeting the people that I did on the Executive MBA.
these personal benefits seem to be quite strong, don't they, Ian? Is that typical of what the cohorts experience?
It is, and I'm so glad to hear Jack say that, because we genuinely do think that the personal element and what people learn about themselves is as important as all the stuff, the sort of content that we deliver. And you can't separate the two, Steve. I mean, they're intrinsic, they're together within the business world and personal life. And I'd go back to what I was saying earlier. The world's very different, and there's no going back. And it's changing exponentially as well. And the sort of leaders that we're going to need to navigate that new world will need to be the sort of leaders that Jack is. They have a self-awareness. They're prepared to reflect. They know they don't have all the answers. They're prepared to learn from good experiences and bad experiences. They surround themselves with good people and listen to what they're saying, yeah? So it's about a pragmatic and a collaborative and a democratic approach to leadership rather than more traditional sort of command and control. So delighted to hear that, Jack, because we would put that at the heart of our MBA.
And honestly, and something else I'd add to that is, the resilience factor that comes through the MBA. And, if I'd look particularly at the entrepreneurship module that I was given the opportunity to undertake, it's such a key element of that module was all around resilience and how failure is not in any way, shape or form failure. So that really opened my eyes, because I've had a couple of entrepreneurial endeavors over the years and genuinely kicked myself afterwards. Oh, why didn't I do it this way? I should have done this. I should have done that. And through this entrepreneurship module and the message of resilience, I learned that actually all of these entrepreneurial endeavors that I've had, every single one of them has been positive, because I've learned that I won't approach something in a certain way next time, or that really worked, I'm going to do that again. And I really took that away from the module, whereby failure is not a bad thing. Failure isn't real. Failure is learning. Learning is good. So I'd certainly add that the resilience element has been extremely powerful to my kind of psyche in the way that I look at both life and work.
That's fantastic, Jack. And let me ask you about Aston Martin. Obviously, the way that you benefits them, but give me some specifics on how Aston Martin, the employer, putting you through the Executive MBA program, how are they benefited?
So I think there is the kind of day-to-day whilst you're on the program, whereby, as Ian touched on, a lot of the modules and a lot of the assignments are practical. So if I was to give an example, the operations module, we had to bring a business problem to the table and write the assignment in order to improve this business problem. So you'd outline the problem and you would set out a plan and a process which would overcome that problem and deliver benefits into the business. So you're kind of plucking the academic theory, framework, structure from this leading university and then applying it that exact day into a practical business problem that's relevant to your role. So there's taking the contemporary knowledge and stitching it into the day-to-day business, which clearly is powerful. It brings a new angle, a new lens to the way that the business does business. There is then the element around, just some of the personal and professional benefits I talked about earlier. Me coming into the workplace, feeling more confident, fulfilled, more educated, can only be beneficial to the company. So one of the key benefits, which again, I never even thought about before joining the program, was how your experience with this and how beneficial it is to you. You want that to spread across the company. So the amount of times that I have conversations with young people about, why don't you take on that qualification? Or I remember you said you were thinking about an apprenticeship. How are you getting on with that? And, trying to guide people and push people towards, the opportunities that I've had, because the benefits are enormous. So, I've gone away, done the apprenticeship. I'm still working at the company. I'm talking about how things are going. I'm pushing other people to do it. So you start to get this critical mass of people who, want to be involved, want to get on the bus. And I think, frankly, from a financial standpoint, it being an apprenticeship means that the employer can access the levy. So if the company doesn't use the levy money for apprenticeships, it loses it. So it's hugely beneficial for the company to put their future talent and existing talent through an apprenticeship like this.
I'm really glad you brought that up, actually, because I want to ask Ian about the apprenticeship levy. Explain what that means and the benefits that can bring to the employers who are involved.
Sure, and indeed the benefits it can bring to Aston and the students who sort of come on our program through the levy, it's added a huge dimension, an extra dimension to what we can do at Aston, and crucially has meant that sort of executive level training and development is now more accessible to a wider group of people. So organisations of a certain size pay into an apprenticeship levy held by the government, and that levy, that pot of funding, can be used to fund students through a lot, not all, but a lot of their MBA programme. And the interesting thing about the degree apprenticeship is in many ways it keeps us honest as well, because as well as all of the good sort of academic stuff and content and dissertation and Aston Edge that we've been talking about, the apprenticeship requires students also to provide a portfolio of evidence and sort of evidence of off-the-job training, of stuff they've done at work, to actually apply some of the stuff they're learning on the academic programme in practice. There are lots of competencies, knowledge, skills and behaviour competencies that we're required to make sure students demonstrate before they can achieve their qualifications. So this, in many ways, almost formalises what we hope we do anyway, which is this wonderful sort of marriage of academic, theoretical discipline, sort of key sort of frameworks and underpinnings with real practical relevance in the real world of interest to and of value to organisations. So it certainly keeps us on our toes in Aston to make sure that we deliver on that. But it has just added a whole new dimension to our executive MBA programs and allowed guys like Jack and a whole other bunch of people who perhaps might not have been able to access executive level training to access that training.
Jack, we've heard from you about some of the benefits that you've taken from the executive MBA, but let's look into the future now. What were your career aspirations before you even took the MBA, and have you been able to reach them as a result?
So I think I've always had a kind of bold vision and, reach for the stars and all that sort of thing. But, the detail behind that plan or those goals has maybe been missing in the past. Whereas having, gone through this very broad program that lets you touch on many different areas, I realized that certainly, commercial, strategic, leadership related roles are where the future lies for me. So if I was to pluck some job titles and give them to you, it would be Chief Commercial Officer, Chief Sales Officer, and I genuinely see no reason why I can't be the Chief Executive Officer at a leading company, a luxury company, potentially automotive. We all know how much I like my cars. And equally, the entrepreneurial streak that I talked about earlier, maybe one day it turns into my own business or my own car company, who knows?
From listening to both of you, I'm getting that theme on the importance of bringing younger employees into senior leadership roles and how Aston University can produce executives and through them help to drive their employers to build more progressive, resilient organisations. A final word from both of you then, with that in mind. Jack, first, what would you say to a younger manager out there in industry considering whether to look at taking an executive MBA?
Do it. Pure and simple, do it. As I talked about earlier, there's the personal element, which I had no idea that it would affect me on such a level when it comes to the personal competence and way of approaching life. So personally, it's amazing. Professionally, you get an incredible qualification out of this, the MBA, the apprenticeship as well, which is an incredible qualification in itself. And frankly, career development. That was one of the big reasons why I did this. Already during the program, I managed to get a promotion. I think the next one is hopefully in the offing. So personal, professional, massive benefits. And I think my other very personal view is the sooner you do this, the better. Life only chucks more challenges at you. So get involved, do it. There's never the perfect time. So the sooner you do it, the better.
And Ian, for anyone out there watching, what are the next steps for a manager or indeed an organisation that wants to look into it to take? What do they need to do next?
So I guess the simple answer is sort of have a look at our website, Steve. We have a huge amount of information there on the programs, both the degree apprenticeship as well as just the pure executive MBA. I mean, as Jack has mentioned, the degree apprenticeship is a fantastic qualification in its own right, internationally recognised, level 7 postgraduate diploma qualification, which allows you to go on and sort of top up to the executive MBA with the project. Or you can just do the pure executive MBA which will take you through exactly the same academic program all the way to the MBA project. Both programs that we offer, huge amount of information on our website. So I'd urge you to start there, have a look, see what you think, and then, of course, get in touch with us.
Ian Cornelius, the Teaching Fellow and Director of the Executive MBA programme here at Aston University, and Jack Miller, Regional Operations Manager for the Middle East and North Africa at Aston Martin. Many thanks to both of you for taking part in this episode of Aston Means Business.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you, Steve.
And thanks to you, our audience, for watching Aston Means Business, an original podcast series for Aston University. Remember, if you enjoyed today's episode, you can find and listen to earlier episodes by simply Googling Aston Means Business. And if you're interested in the Executive MBA course here at Aston University, or if you want to find out if your company can benefit from the apprenticeship levy, visit aston.ac.uk/business to find out more. Meanwhile, we'll be back soon with more interviews with some of the top business academics and graduates here at Aston University. Aston Means Business. Thanks for listening.